Mental health is just as important for us children as it is for adults. That is why we spoke to the experts from the Children's Institute at UCT about their contribution to the 2022 Child Gauge on Child and Adolescent Mental Health. Stay tuned for educational entertainment right now on RX Radio.
We think about childhood a little bit like an adventure course, so we move through it section by section. And as we go along through that course, things come up. So there can be challenges and they can help us to learn new things. There can be advantages that make things a little bit easier for us or that help us. And there can be obstacles, and those obstacles can slow us down and can make things harder. Life for children is never perfect, that things will come up and they can experience knocks, and that things don't always turn out the way we want them to. But how we respond to that and how we help children and how we might help children to help themselves is an important thing to understand. We do know that if something harsh happens early on in your life, that it can affect you later. So life course science is really about helping parents and teachers and society to understand what we can do for children and adolescents when they do experience stress or when something harsh does happen, and how we can make things a little bit easier for them as they grow up.
Today we are talking about keeping balance with our mind and body. How does the brain and body work together as a team?
In our chapter, we use something called the Biopsychosocial Model to explain how this works. So it's really just a fancy term for saying that, we have a brain and we have a body and they work together. It's quite hard to think about them together at the same time. So sort of like when you're in biology class, you tend to think about biology only, or when you're on the playground, you think about playing only. But when we think about them together, we can start to think about how we can use them together to improve our mental health. So the bio part of the model is really about our bodies, and we can think about our bodies as our engine room. It's the part of ourselves that help us to get things done. So if we think about all the things that we do, we breathe, we walk, we smell, and those things we do really without having to think about it very much. Our body does it almost on autopilot. And being able to do those things means we have to fuel our body. So important parts of looking after our mental health include things like eating healthy foods, making sure we get enough exercise, and not spending too much time on the couch or too much time on our screens to help our engine run smoothly. We also need to understand that our body's main way of growing is through our hormone system. And our hormone system changes at different times in order to give our bodies a boost and to help it grow. But it doesn't always happen smoothly. So sometimes it can leave us feeling a little bit awkward in ourselves as we grow up. The psycho part of the model is more about our brains and our feelings. And really, if our bodies are our big engine room, then our brains are our control room. So our brain helps us to send messages to the body to coordinate it, to help us understand what's going on around us, and to problem solve and motivate our behavior. The control room in our brain uses the same hormonal systems and neurotransmitters to send messages down to help coordinate our behavior. But how your brain grows inside is very much about what's happening on the outside. So lots of your experiences, your learning in school, your hobbies, your friendships, and your relationships will help your brain to develop what we call executive functions. And executive functions are those things that help us to coordinate all of our body and our brain together. The last important part of the model is the social, and that's just about having people and important relationships around us as we grow. So really, our chapter teaches us that our brains and our bodies and our families work together to help us grow strong and have good mental health. We have to eat, sleep, and exercise. We have to learn, play, and experience. And we definitely need people to love us and keep us safe as we grow up in order to have good mental health.
How can we act from the outside in when we're feeling down?
So some of what happens when we have sad feelings is that we often start moving around less. So we might not feel like getting out of bed. We might sit on the sofa more than we usually do. And by not being active, we become what we call sedentary. And not moving around then helps to keep us feeling low. Other people might also notice that we're doing less than usual. We might become a little bit grumpy and irritable, and so people talk to us less. And then we become lonely and isolated, and that's what we call the cycle of low mood. So activation is something that we can do to try and counter that low mood. And what it means is, even if you don't feel like it, you do something very, very small. So we can do what we call a shake it off exercise, where you stand up and you don't try and do anything big. You just shake your arms, shake your feet, and get a little bit of movement going. You can also go for a walk. You can dance to your favorite song. And all of those things help to activate our body. And that usually helps mood improve.
Exam time is around the corner for matric students and other students. How can students cope with the stress of taking exam?
So I think there's two things that are important and useful. The one is to calm yourself and regulate yourself when you're feeling very, very stressed. So when your heart is beating fast and fluttering, it's hard to concentrate. So practicing deep breaths in and out to calm your heart helps your brain then get some more control over your body. So deep breaths in and out are a really good way to calm yourself. Another thing that's really important is to remember that even though studying and revising is important, it's important not to sit still and study at your desk for hours and hours, because your brain becomes tired and your mood can become low. So try and take regular breaks while you're studying. Make sure you try and keep up at least one hobby or activity that keeps you outdoors during your studying time, because that helps your brain concentrate for longer and it helps you remember more.
Is there anything else you would like to say?
I think a big part of looking after our mental health is to watch out for our thoughts. So sometimes we can get quite a lot of negative thoughts, especially when we're experiencing stress. We can think things like, I'm not good enough, or I don't know how to handle this situation. It's important to keep a check on those thoughts and to talk back to them sometimes. When you start feeling like you have lots and lots of negative thoughts, they become very powerful. So you need to practice talking back to your negative thoughts. Say things like, I'm actually good at a lot of things, or I'm really brave, or I'm really strong. And say those things even out loud. You may feel silly doing it, but it does remind your brain not to become too negative about itself. So watch out for negative thoughts and keep them in check.
Thank you for listening to this interview on 2022 Child Gauge on Child and Adolescent Mental Health. We hope that you learned something new about the importance of taking care of our mental health. This was put together by RX Radio, a radio station by and for children at Red Cross War Memorial Children's Hospital. If you'd like to find out more about the Child Gauge interviews, visit our YouTube channel or head over to the Children's Institute website at www.ci.uct.ac.za. That's www.ci.uct.ac.za. RX Radio by and for children.